The After House by Mary Roberts Rinehart. I Plan a Voyage. By the bequest of an elder brother, I was left enough money to see me through a small college in Ohio and to secure me 4 years in a medical school in the East. Why I chose medicine I hardly know. Possibly the career of a surgeon attracted the adventurous element in me. Perhaps, coming of a family of doctors, I merely followed in the line of least resistance. It may be, indirectly but inevitably, that I might be on the yacht Ella on that terrible night of August 12th, more than a year ago. I got through somehow. I played quarterback on the football team and made some money coaching. In summer, I did whatever came to hand, from chartering a sailboat at a summer resort and taking passengers at so much a head to checking up cucumbers in Indiana for a Western pickle house. I was practically alone. Commencement left me with a diploma, a new dress suit, an out-of-date medical library, a box of surgical instruments of the same date as the books, and an incipient case of typhoid fever. I was 24, 6 feet tall, and 40 inches around the chest. Also, I had lived clean and worked and played hard. I got over the fever finally, pretty much all bone and appetite, but alive. Thanks to the college, my hospital care had cost nothing. It was a good thing. I had just $7 in the world. The yacht Ella lay in the river not far from my hospital windows. She was not a yacht when I first saw her, nor at any time technically, unless I use the word in the broad sense of a pleasure boat. She was a two-master, and, when I saw her first, as dirty and disreputable as are most coasting vessels, her rejuvenation was the history of my convalescence. On the day she stood forth in her first coat of white paint, I exchanged my dressing gown for clothing that, however loosely it hung, was still clothing. Her new sails marked my promotion to beefsteak. Her brass rails and awnings my first independent excursion up and down the corridor outside my door, and, incidentally, my return to a collar and tie. The river shipping appealed to me, to my imagination, clean washed by my illness and ready as a child's for new impressions. Liners gliding down to the bay and the open sea, shrewish scolding tugs, dirty but picturesque tramps. My enthusiasm amused the nurses, whose ideas of adventure consisted of little jaunts of exploration into the abdominal cavity and whose aseptic minds revolted at the sight of dirty sails. One day I pointed out to one of them an old schooner, red and brown, with patched canvas spread, moving swiftly down the river before a stiff breeze. "Look at her!" I exclaimed. "There goes adventure, mystery, romance. I should like to be sailing on her." "You would have to boil the drinking water," she replied dryly. "And the ship is probably swarming with rats." "Rats," I affirmed, "add to the local color. Ships are their native habitat. Only sinking ships don't have them." But her answer was to retort that rats carried bubonic plague, and to exit carrying the sugar bowl. I was ravenous, as are all convalescent typhoids, and one of the ways in which I eked out my still slender diet was by robbing the sugar bowl at meals. That day, I think it was, the deck furniture was put out on the Ella. Numbers of white wicker chairs and tables, with bright cushions to match the awnings. I had a pair of ancient opera glasses, as obsolete as my amputating knives, and, like them, a part of my heritage. By that time I felt a proprietary interest in the Ella, and through my glasses, carefully focused with a pair of scissors, watched the arrangement of the deck furnishings. A girl was directing the men. I judged from the poise with which she carried herself that she was attractive and knew it. How beautiful she was and how well she knew it, I was to find out before long. McWhirter, to the contrary, she had nothing to do with my decision to sign as a sailor on the Ella. One of the bright spots of that long, hot summer was McWhirter. We had graduated together in June, and in October he was to enter a hospital in Buffalo as a resident. But he was as indigent as I, and from June to October is 4 months. 4 months, he said to me. Even at 2 meals a day, boy, that's something over 240. And I can eat 4 times a day without a struggle. Wouldn't you think one of these overworked for the good of humanity dubs would take a vacation and give me a chance to hold down his practice? Nothing of the sort developing, McWhirter went into a drugstore and managed to pull through the summer with unimpaired cheerfulness, confiding to me that he secured his luncheons free at the soda counter. He came frequently to see me, bringing always a pocketful of chewing gum, which he assured me was excellent to allay the gnawings of hunger, and later, as my condition warranted it, small bags of gumdrops and other pharmacy confections. McWhirter it was who got me my berth on the Ella. It must have been about the 20th of July, for the Ella sailed on the 28th. I was strong enough to leave the hospital, but not yet physically able for any prolonged exertion. McWhirter, who was short and stout, had been alternately flirting with the nurse as she moved in and out, preparing my room for the night, and sizing me up through narrowed eyes. "No," he said, evidently following a private line of thought. "You don't belong behind a counter, Leslie. I'm darned if I think you belong in the medical profession either. The British Army'd suit you." "The what?" "You know, Kipling idea, riding horseback, head of a column, undress uniform, colonel's wife making eyes at you, leading last hopes and all that. The British Army with Kipling trimmings being out of the question, the original issue is still before us. I'll have to work, Mac, and work like the devil if I'm to feed myself." There being no answer to this, McWhirter contented himself with eyeing me. "I'm thinking," I said, "of going to Europe. The sea is calling me, Mac." "So was the grave a month ago, but it didn't get you. Don't be an ass, boy. How are you going to sea?" "Before the mast." This apparently conveying no meaning to McWhirter, I supplemented, "as a common sailor." He was indignant at first, offering me his room and a part of his small salary until I got my strength. Then he became dubious, and finally, so well did I paint my picture of long idle days on the ocean, of sweet cool nights under the stars, with breezes that purred through the sails, rocking the ship to slumber. Finally he waxed enthusiastic and was even for giving up the pharmacy at once and sailing with me. He had been fitting out the storeroom of a sailing yacht with drugs, he informed me, and doing it under the personal direction of the owner's wife. "I've made a hit with her," he confided. "Since she's learned I'm a graduate M.D., she's letting me do the whole thing. I've made up some lotions to prevent sunburn, and that seasick prescription of old Larimer's, and she thinks I'm the whole cheese. I'll suggest you as ship's doctor." "How many men in the crew?" "8, I think, or 10. It's a small boat, and carries a small crew." "Then they don't want a ship's doctor. If I go, I'll go as a sailor," I said firmly. "And I want your word, Mac, not a word about me, except that I am honest." "You'll have to wash decks, probably." "I'm filled with a wild longing to wash decks," I asserted, smiling at his disturbed face. "I should probably also have to polish brass. There's a great deal of brass on the boat." "How do you know that?" When I told him, he was much excited, and although it was dark and the Ella consisted of 3 lights, he insisted on the opera glasses, and was persuaded he saw her. Finally he put down the glasses and came over to me. "Perhaps you were right, Leslie," he said soberly. "You don't want charity any more than they want a ship's doctor. Wherever you go and whatever you do, whether you're swabbing decks in your bare feet or polishing brass railings with an old sock, you're a man." He was more moved than I had ever seen him, and ate a gumdrop to cover his embarrassment. Soon after that he took his departure, and the following day he telephoned to say that, if the sea was still calling me, he could get a note to the captain recommending me. I asked him to get the note. Good old Mac! The sea was calling me, true enough, but only dire necessity was driving me to the ship before the mast. Necessity, and perhaps what, for want of a better name, we call destiny. For what is fate but inevitable law, inevitable consequence? The stirring of my blood, generations removed from a seafaring ancestor. My illness, not a cause but a result. McWhirter, filling prescriptions behind the glass screen of a pharmacy, and fitting out in porcelain jars the medicine closet of the Ella. Turner and his wife, Schwartz, the mulatto Tom, Singleton, and Elsa Lee, all thrown together, a hodgepodge of characters, motives, passions, and hereditary tendencies, through an inevitable law working together toward the terrible night of August 22nd, when hell seemed loose on the painted sea. End of chapter 1. Read by Tom Penn.